Reddit Martian back with another tip-top video for you. r/AskReddit. What was the dumbest thing you thought as a child? I used to think my mom was such a good shopper. She would pick out all these groceries, and when she got up to the checker, she would only give them one piece of money, and they would give her several pieces of money back and we got to keep the groceries. That man was so stupid. Mommy, you gave him $100 bill, and he gave us back 3 $1 bills. Grandparents were assigned to families. Like, I didn't know my grandma was my dad's mom. Lived in Germany for a few years. My dad convinced me that windshield wipers were called Flippenflippenmarkenspritters. This was pre-Google Translate. I'm German and I can confirm that is what they're called. If you say that to a German person and they look at you with their eyes wide open, that means they're impressed by how good you are at German. Trust me, I wouldn't just lie like that, would I? Own 2 credit cards and use them to pay for each other for infinite money. That the Underground Railroad was a literal secret underground subway style steam engine that Harriet Tubman was the conductor of. When you have a baby you have to push one of your testicles out and it became the baby egg. I had no idea how I was my parents' 3rd child. The inside of my stomach was another village with their own villagers. Every time I drank, it rained. Every time I ate, it fed the people. A tummy ache was because the villagers were unhappy. I was vaguely aware of a TV show called Ironsides about a lawyer in a wheelchair. Whenever I heard the word paralegal, I thought it meant a paraplegic lawyer. It made sense to me that people in wheelchairs could make excellent lawyers, based on the nature of the job and their physical limitations. I thought paralegals were lawyers who'd parachute to the scene of a crime so people would have their story straight before the cops showed up, like paratroopers. I used to believe that night is brought about by clouds, dark ones, of course. Never felt the need to clarify this with anybody. It was an obvious fact. I used to think trees made wind. Trees move. Wind happens, can't explain that. My parents gave me a book about the birds and the bees that was illustrated. They showed a couple in bed in the missionary position. In that same book, there was a picture of a man's erect penis, which was shown as parallel to the floor as he stood. The book didn't explain that the penis is somewhat flexible. There was a diagram of the vagina and uterus but no picture showing the naked woman. I didn't have any sisters and my parents weren't the kind of parents that walked around naked or semi-naked, clothed at all times. For the longest time I thought I was deformed. My vagina was between my legs when those pictures made it look like it should be on my stomach. I was horrified and I would scream if anyone opened the bedroom door while I was changing or using the bathroom because my deformity would be discovered. That babies were inside their mom's literal belly. If she swallowed a cherry tomato whole I thought it would land and bounce on the baby's head. I remember watching the movie Cocoon with my grandparents. I could not have been more than 4. For some reason I deduced that in order to become adults, children had to die in these pool cocoons and be reborn old. I freaked my cousins out and had a whole group of kids crying at a holiday party over our impending doom. Ruined Christmas pictures that year. That if you drink while peeing you'll keep peeing until you stop drinking. I thought that highways functioned like airport moving walkways. I used to believe that people that spoke other languages translated their language to mine in their head. That if people are going to study something they just sit in a circle with other students and think about what they want to do. As soon as they find out, they are done and they can leave. I wish lol. That if April was a month, Ninja Turtles must also be a month. I thought that there would be a baby inside every girl's stomach as soon as she is born and inside that baby's stomach too there would be a tiny baby. The cycle goes on. And that the baby keeps growing as we grow and after getting married the doctors will cut the stomach and take the baby out to make space for another baby. My uncle is a priest for an obscure Hindu offshoot religion, and he told me quite young that I shouldn't play sport because each person only gets a set number of breaths in their life and getting out of breath used them up quicker. I used to spend hours laying in bed trying to make my breaths as long and slow as possible. In fairness, I actually have a decent lung capacity as an adult, so maybe it had a positive effect. People that died in movies really died. I was watching a movie with my dad wherein the main character had his arm cut off. I turned to my dad and asked, "That's fake, right?" And my dad, very sincerely, said no. That actor's getting paid a lot of money to have his arm cut off. And all the color drained from my face and I said, "Oh, okay." I was in my early 20s when I had that aha moment where I realized he was messing with me. I felt terrible as a kid to eat. I wouldn't eat in front of people, and every meal I would find myself thinking poor food getting eaten because I was convinced they had emotions. That all companies with a TM trademark were owned by my family, only because those are my initials. That the local mosque in my city was Aladdin's vacation home. When I was a young kid, maybe between 5-9, my dad took me to the tiny grass runway airport in my town. And we went on a short plane ride in a small Cessna around the valley. My dad sat in the back, and I was up front with the pilot. While we taxied off the ramp and out to the runway, I was given permission to move the yoke. I thought I was steering the aircraft the whole way. I told my mom that I taxied the plane. In school I told my class that I taxied the plane. In fact, it was so strong a memory that I grew up remembering the memory without evaluating the experience. I was home on leave from a naval aviation squadron when I was talking about that flight with my dad, and I was thinking about it, and I had this long pause, and I said, "Holy shit, Dad, I just realized that I wasn't steering that Cessna." My father laughed his butt off. When I was really young, I was convinced I was pregnant. I'm a man BTW, with a baby cat named Bridget. My family decided to see how long I would believe this, so they never told me how ridiculously impossible that was. I went on believing it for about 5 months. That's how long little me thought cat pregnancy lasted, and then when the baby never came, I went to my mom and asked when Bridget would be born. She finally told me that boys can't get pregnant and humans can't give birth to cats. I was traumatized. Little me was so excited to be a cat father, and then it was ripped away from me. I was such a stupid kid. That if you poked your belly button too hard, then it would come open like a plug and all of your internal organs would spill out. That the world actually used to be black and white like it was in old movies. And even asked my mom what it felt like when all the colors suddenly appeared. I believed hamburger and hot dog buns were only available for restaurants, not civilians. Mom used sliced bread, toasted to obliterate the gums, at home to make burgers and hot dogs. I believed that until the age of 10. Not something I believed, but a harmless prank I used to play on my kids. There is a highway we use that has several long, gentle curves over a 5-6 mile stretch. One day when my younger son complained that the sun was in his eyes, he was about 3 at the time, I had the idea to pretend that I had a personal relationship with Mr. Sun. I saw that the highway was going to curve, so I had a conversation with Mr. Sun explaining the situation and asking him to please move over so that he wasn't shining in my son's eyes. I drew out the conversation and timed it so just when Mr. Sun agreed, we would start the curve and it looked like he was moving over and out of my son's eyes. Then after another curve, the sun would be in my other son's eyes, so I asked politely for Mr. Sun to move again, just as we went around the next curve. This went on for almost a year before my wife explained to them what was going on. It was hilarious in the meantime. I thought if you left a video game on, then a character would come out of the TV and kill you. I was a bit paranoid as a small kid. I used to think adults were in full control and knew exactly what they were doing. I grew up around the time of the release of the Star Wars prequels. I vividly remember asking my brother as to why they released the sequels, New Hope etc., before they released The Phantom Menace, as it made no sense when I was 11 and a prequel was a wild new concept to me. He had me convinced, embarrassingly until I was about 15-16, that the reason they released the sequels first was because there was a fire at the studio and it burned all the original tapes, so they had to reshoot them. I was so ducking dense. I was under the impression that there were tiny rats that lived inside of my stomach, and when they ran in their wheels for exercise it would make me need to pee. I used to think that once you finished a grade in primary school you became smarter than the teacher of that grade. That there's a tiny human inside the TV who executed what the remote was telling him to do. For example, when you press the button to increase the volume, he is being hit in a specific way that lets him know that he has to go and manually increase the volume. I thought gunpoint was an actual location, somewhere on the coast, where people kept getting robbed. I used to think that the sunlight rays piercing through overcast days were how new Power Rangers were selected. I wanted to be a Power Ranger really badly, so I was always sad when I couldn't be in a Ray. Do you know what you are? That's right, you're a champ. Thanks for watching. Like and share if you enjoyed. Don't forget the bell. Subscribe for more videos. See you soon, Martians.